everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Resibuild Podcast, Constructive Conversations. Today, I'm joined by an expert in the golden thread and digital technology in the context of building safety, and we're going to be talking about how technology can be used in relation to the golden thread and a new building safety regime. I'm joined by Johnny Furlong. Welcome, Johnny.
Thank you very much for having me, Nick.
Tell us a little bit about your background, Johnny.
Yeah, so I suppose I've been in digital construction my whole life. I wanted to be an architect, but kept failing the exams to get in to be an architect. So, changed. And career started, was one of the first people in the UK and Ireland to be trained using Revit. I spent a lot of time doing that before moving into what we know as sort of BIM now. Worked for large architectural practices, worked for M&E subcontractors, and then a lot of time spent with main contractors. So your Balfour Beatty and Mace, I spent time with both of them. Before then, and after that, I moved into being in the owner-operator space. So I worked for a really large housing association. I suppose it was in there that my whole interest really came about with building safety. So as part of that, I had decided to set up an initiative called the Golden Thread Initiative, because I felt there wasn't enough proactivity happening in the industry. And that eventually then fell underneath the Ministry of Housing as the Golden Thread Initiative, which I was vice chair of. It led into a really, really exciting, interesting period around building safety. And now I am working for Dalux, who are a Danish software company, who have a platform which we have contractors using to help them achieve their Golden Thread requirements for Building Safety Act.
So really insightful opportunity to dig into some of those points, and I'm looking forward to discussing it with you now. But perhaps if we just start off looking at the golden thread more generally and the role of software. In the context of building safety, we are mainly aware as an industry now that there's an obligation to have a digital golden thread.
Yeah.
But what is the role? Why digital? What is the background behind that, Johnny?
Yeah, well, I think there's been a hotly debated topic in the industry around, even what sometimes the word digital is and electronic and so on. And the amount of times I'd spent there listening, there's this debate going on. And the reality is, it's the regime around building safety is to be a lot more rigorous. It needs a lot more information, needs a lot more control, a lot more process driven, a lot more data really. And the reality is you need technology to do that. It has to be, a digital solution to the golden thread. It should be obvious, no one wants to go back to pushing paper around and sending faxes. Digital is the way forward. I think then, given the real thing is how do we, make that happen? What parts of the digital, how do we do it? And I suppose when I'm consulting with, the really good quality contractors out there, they really see digital obviously as an advantage, not just for building safety, but for all the other things they're trying to do around quality, cost control, etc. And the conversations really should be about, how do you do digital along with all the other change that they're trying to do? They shouldn't be separate. I think some people see the golden thread just as, oh, well, can I buy a system off you that's golden thread compliant? Yes, you can. Okay, now where's my template and how do I tick that box and move on? And those are the type of companies I don't think are really getting it, while the other quality ones want to come in and go, all right, how do we do this big change piece? How do we implement digital technologies to not only comply with the golden thread and tick that box, but also actually to move their business forward, to actually control quality? Because I'm a really, really big believer in everything that's required to deal with building safety in the golden thread is exactly what you need to do in your business to have better quality. And obviously better quality, less defects, more profit for the contractors out there.
So that's a really interesting points you made there, and touching on a few of those. The golden thread and the background to it is ultimately that Hackett identified the significant change needed in the industry, and the fact that with the Grenfell, the whole investigation and so on around that, sadly the information which was available was extremely lacking in there. So I guess looking at that in a broader context, we kind of know why we need to head that direction. But what do you think are the effective barriers, and what did you find in that Golden Thread initiative, which were the things which are stopping people doing it? Because we know that digital is the way the whole world is going, and the industry has seen a lot of change in a positive sense and in that direction over the last few years anyway. But what did you find as the kind of most the key barriers which are stopping that digital thread being implemented?
Yeah, I think there's a few barriers there around trying to implement a good golden thread. I think some of it is overcomplication, if I'm to be honest. Some people who are, like too dead fast on a very certain part of BIM or ISO 19650 or something where people are trying to focus on, you get experts in the room who are really interested in a particular point, and what they really want to do is implement, maybe a particular way of working or a particular standard. Yet they're actually not actually taking a step back and actually focusing on what they're really trying to do is, what's going to be the outcome? Are they going to have an effective change management process where they're controlling the information and quality through the whole stages of construction? Making how do they make sure those decision making is happening? So I think people weren't taking a holistic approach. I think sometimes people are focusing on the wrong areas, making things too complicated. I still feel a lot of people in the industry don't fully understand what a golden thread is, or what it should be doing. So I think that's a big part. I think there's parts then around, obviously change is hard. We all know, so there's the whole culture aspect of, what do people want to change? And there's stuff I maybe touched on earlier. There's the good organizations who are really get it and see this as an opportunity, while others go, what is the minimum amount of cost I can do to get away with it? I think there are obviously big challenges. I think the other one that I really see is around this area is sort of when our industry is amazing at dividing stuff into packages of work and subcontracting and having experts. And I think sometimes then, that doesn't help around the whole golden thread where, ideally where BIM managers, information managers, whoever they are who are going to be in control of this, need to be looking at, are they delivering stuff that the actual construction, the on-site teams need, that the design teams need, that, the supply chain need? Are the tools suitable for that? And are you implementing things that are going to deliver real positive outcomes, safer buildings, better quality buildings? Or are you trying to implement technology for the sake of implementing technology that somebody could say is, yes, that is, tick that box. So I think there's a multitude of ones there. The other big ones is the industry really is at a two-speed. Just those who want to make change, and there's those who just don't care. Frankly, I think they're still sitting back, and they feel that I think we're starting to see some of it now, where there's lots of delays, but on site, going through the building safety process. But I think at the moment, some people just thought the problem would disappear and they wouldn't have to deal with it.
Yeah. And so we're seeing that certainly at Gateway 2, and we lots of delays in the industry, and we'll perhaps come back to that in a second. I just wanted to pick up, you made a point about change management there. Obviously that's a part of the golden thread which needs that control when something is changing in the building, because reality is that as builts weren't necessarily as built as it may have appeared. But talk to us a little bit about that change management. How does that feed into the broader control process? Because it is one of the requirements of Gateway 2, and demonstrate how you can manage that change. But how does that feed into the kind of software piece?
Change has always happened on construction sites. It was almost a given, and I think some of that comes down to designs not being ready early enough, which we can touch on. But the change has always happened on construction sites, and it's how are you going to manage that change effectively? If you're going through the gateway process in in a HRB building, then every time you do one of those changes, it's going to really impact you because you have to get sign off. So it's all, I think a lot of this is about putting in the groundwork, being prepared, having systems that I said are really usable. So I think there's a few different factors in here when you're implementing digital systems. You need to be able to get into really good levels of details to control, but the systems need to be usable. So, doing inspection and test planning, you really need to be able to know what it is that you're building, when you're going to be inspecting, so that you can control that quality. And then having the tools, the digital tools in place, that when somebody does need to make a change, how and who is going to be involved in that. So how is that decision making happening, which quite often was like an area you saw in the Grenfell reports that, even people taking minutes and notes on meetings, nobody can obviously find them. So, so it's about trying to have a system that works holistically, bringing a sort of, a single system approach where everybody knows where the information is. And when something does need to change, there's a really clear process that can do that. I think also the industry needs to move more towards, like almost an individual component based rather than, areas of work, because I think, we need to track the information a lot better. But this is where digital is amazing for that. The models can be stuffed full of so much information. We have all these tools now. I think the challenge isn't that we don't have the tools. It's about making sure we have, the right tools being used and implemented and rolled out in a good way. It's about, I think sometimes, we as technology vendors maybe don't give enough support to our customers, while I think, I think, good companies are, and helping them instead of just selling software, but helping them decide, actually, how do I implement this? How am I going to improve my business?
So on that kind of approach then, is it, from your experience, better to look at having one holistic tool which covers various different aspects of it? Or is it better picking kind of a combination of specialist tools, but perhaps a little bit more fragmented in the kind of the implementation? What's your advice around that?
Yeah, so I think there's sort of three sort of schools of thought on this. So there is the ones who have systems, and they might have these systems for years, and they're like dying systems where they don't want to change at any cost. It's just like that they feel change is just too hard. They're like, oh, I have an old document management system, but we've had been my company for 20 years and nobody likes it. It's terrible, or we're still not going to move because of this perceived, it's good harder to change, So I think there's that approach, which I obviously don't agree with at all. You have others who I think are then, wanting the newest and fanciest tools completely, so everybody who wants, on that sort of, bleeding edge, where you have, innovators in companies who they will want the best of absolutely everything, the newest of everything. They're happy to try tools, on every different project. Innovation has to happen, and it's brilliant, but I think you need to be careful on where you go with that, as in, are you doing change because you're innovating and you're bringing in lots of different systems because you are a innovation manager or a BIM manager and it's cool and a brilliant thing to do? Or are you doing it because your exec team have a plan to be innovative? I think in the construction industry, the good ones are in that middle ground where they actually want, really good, easy to use systems that are going to deliver for them, where they want innovation, but they don't necessarily, want to be on that bleeding edge where often it's maybe not working, where it's not actually delivering real results, real tangible things like improved quality. So I think in that sense, and having a platform approach where that works together, that is easy to use, is a better system. And I think particularly around the golden thread, this is where it comes in. If you have 5 different technology vendors, you then need to start using. Sometimes you'll have 5 different technology vendors, and then you're trying to work with all of them and they don't implement together really well. So then you might have in another consultancy who's in trying to stitch information from those systems together, and some of them do a great job at it. But then what happens in 5, 10 15, 20 years time, if you've had all of these different systems and you're constantly, you're taking, the best 360, some 361 here, some, doc management here, some site here, some, X here, some Y here, and all those systems. And then every few years, if they're changing, where does that leave you, as in from a golden thread perspective? How do, like, if you think of the concept of having that place where you're managing information, where people can come and find the information, where they can find the decision making, where if you have to jump between 5 different systems, it's just a nightmare from that perspective. I'm actually trying to trying to explain to the regulator, oh, here's, if you want to see this, you go to this system. If you want to see actually the other part of that same component, you come into this system. Oh, and then if you actually want to see the reports and the photographs, you come into this system. So yeah, I personally think for those who, they need to find that middle ground where, they have a really core, stable platform from companies. Like, for instance, in Dalux, we do a lot of innovation. We update our platform, multiple times a year. We're trying to deliver for our customers, but we also need to make sure that, at the heart of that is a really solid, good, simple, easy to use system that's delivering benefits benefits right now.
So really back to your point you made earlier, it's really back to that outcome focus again, understanding that, but also understanding where the direction of things may be going, because what might be the best software tool today may not be for tomorrow.
Yeah.
So taking that kind of point there and applying it to the gateway process, one of the bits of feedback, and obviously as we know right now, there's very few projects, new build projects, which actually pass through Gateway 2.
Yeah, it's a big problem.
Yeah, there's huge delays in it. A lot of the statistics which have been seen and have come back from the BSR is that a lot of them are being rejected through lack of information.
Yeah.
What do you think is going wrong here? Is it actually the applications? Is it the regulator process? Where's it currently not working, do you think?
Well, I think it's a wholly foreseeable problem. We should, everyone, I've been talking about this for a long time. The problem was coming. Everyone's have knew about it. There was, not enough people being prepared early enough. And I suppose like the scale of the problem is big. Like, we've had, in the press just in the last week, I had a look before I came down here, we've had people like the CEO of Unite, saying that it's taking an additional 6 months timelines on all of their projects. We've had the Home Builders Federation saying, 12 months plus on, an average with theirs. And we've had other developers, again saying, sometimes up to 18 months delays to their projects going through the gateway process. So huge amount of delays and problems. I think then this comes down to, the whole approach to this. I think there is the ones who will actually take advantage of this, because I actually really do believe there's opportunity here as well as this big problem. Maybe we'll come on to the opportunity, but I think some of the problem is the regulator and not being ready. This whole multidisciplinary outsourcing approach they have seems to be contributing some to it. So that's some of the problem. But also they are rejecting the majority of the applications that come to them at Gateway 2, say they are a really poor application.
Yeah.
In most instances, it appears that people are submitting what they would have submitted historically at that time frame without realizing that they needed to do a lot more prep work, so they needed to have much more detailed designs. And I know that, Nick, we've talked about this previously, where you have some organizations who want to get you involved in design early and some who don't. And I think you'd probably say that those who aren't getting the design early then are coming into problems. So I think it's an approach that people are having here that they haven't realized. Need to do earlier design, need to have the systems in place. It's about doing more upfront work, getting to that gateway process, being prepared, putting in the groundwork. I think, we've been working with some really good organizations, really good, tier 1 organizations who for the last year or two have been spending a lot of time and effort in preparing, being ready for this. and then we have other ones who haven't. And I think some are starting to be found out now that they were just like, they're now going, oh, what do we do? How do we have the systems? How do we have the knowledge? How do we have, all of that in place? And I think that's really been the big issue. Is just people did for all the shouting in the industry, people didn't get prepared early enough.
Yeah, I agree, and we're certainly seeing that we've got very proactive companies, Waits, Winwood Dixon, Cisc, those kind of companies who have been very collaborative at an early stage. By doing that, you can work out what the aspirations are, the challenges for the project. You can then start streamlining the design and actually save a shitload of money.
Yeah.
And the interface and so on should be more efficient. IDA time will prove whether that means that the build programs are quicker, but it's sort of anticipating those. Because if you're fixing those details, and bear in mind that some of these details with the new regime is the major changes. They need to get back into the regulator, and there's weeks worth of delays. If you're trying to make everything universally compatible, you probably end up actually increasing your costs quite significantly in an early stage, and we'll end up with various delays where you have to go back in for major changes. But interesting your thoughts now.
Yeah, some of that comes back into maybe a little bit so with that not wanting to change. It's not just that technology needs to change. It's not just how we maybe manage quality needs to change, but also we need to do some changes perhaps around procurement. Just doing it the same way we always did maybe isn't right. So as I said, it's about, do you get in yet, for instance, sapphire balconies earlier to do some design work to set critical elements like the setting out of the balcony points and the interfaces there. And it doesn't mean that then people have to, you have to get into contract earlier and commit earlier. It just means about bringing some parts of it forward and having that flexible approach. I think it comes into a lot of, we talk about in the BIM world, collaboration a lot, and this comes up, but it's not just in the digital world, and when you're on site, the collaboration needs to happen. It needs to happen when procurement, it needs to happen with the design phase, it needs to happen throughout, people having those conversations, I think, earlier. And I think then the other point is you're dead right that the companies like your Waits and your Ciscs who are doing this, they do look at this and they go, I think they see opportunities here. It's about, if you're doing everything you need to control and stop change, because I think there's often too much change on projects. If you're able to stop that and control that change, and you're able to control quality all the way through, then for like the really quality brands, this is going to deliver what they want, which is often they're not trying to have, beat their programs. They just want reliable programs. They want to be able to deliver their project on time, on budget, but importantly to the right type of quality. So, I think, the quality brands see maybe a small amount of delay during the gateway process, but if that's factored in and they're delivering what it's meant to be, so slightly longer stretch programs, but delivering to them every single time to the right amount of quality, that gives them then the opportunity for like increased profit margins, because it's all about that. And I see this is really where the two tiers, the two sort of I'm not saying the two camps of we are going, thank you, Nick, two camps of quality ones improving the whole process, improving their quality, improving everything else, versus the ones who are just like, we're going to do it the same way and try to get through it. And I think we're starting to see people are starting to get caught out on this, and and I think there's a big backlog of high-rise residential buildings in the pipeline going to come through, and people have been holding off, but they can only hold off on them so long. So I think my message to anyone is, look, it is possible, but you're going to have to do change and look at this as a real opportunity to help drive other fundamental things in your business.
Yeah, and I might just add to your list as well, risk management is obviously a key part of that process, because there is a lot of uncertainty at this stage with the gateway processes. Partly could say it's because the regulator obviously wants the industry to work it out rather than give any guidance and so on.
Yeah.
Where the right balance is in that process, yet to see. But obviously there are other elements of risk management, and the accountability and the traceability and so on are all part of that process as well. But tell us a little bit about the role of technology in the process of risk management and the control. the control of risk, if you like?
Yeah, so I think, like I said, risk is obviously a major factor on construction projects, like all types of risk, whether it's health and safety risk,
Yeah.
financial risk, it is really there. I think, having better information, better data is really, really important around managing risk. Really good processes, and not just, being overloaded with data, but being able to use, the right data to make, informed choices to be able to control risk is really, really important. And I think obviously, there's a whole debate around the whole MMC stuff, and obviously I'm a big fan of MMC when it's done right. I think unfortunately the industry's been getting a bit of a bashing in the press recently. I think often that's maybe to do with maybe the wrong types of MMC or people not implementing in the right way. Because when it's done well, this whole factory approach to, because factories are really good about risk, really good at managing that risk. I think, and a lot of that then comes into, really set processes with clear information, with people knowing what they're doing and how they're doing it, and being able to use systems to document that incredibly well. And I think taking that approach then and moving it away from the factory setting into the construction site is, lessons that we need to learn and do. Because I know you can probably talk a little bit about how, in your factory process that you manage that and manage out that risk, because it's sort of been part of what you've been doing for a long time.
Yeah, so couple of examples from our process. We've got a tool called Passport, which is a sort of, as the name infers, stops things moving, stops the balcony moving through the production stages. So people are taking photos, but more recently, the checking of the use of AI to actually check, for example, for welds, make sure the welds are correct and so on, is something which it's more often accurate than not, and that's a continuous training process, obviously, and also that kind of making usability easy to make sure it's maximizing the success of those kind of tools. But it is back to that kind of process of accountability and control measures, and you can understand what's going on with the data as well, because there's products which we would never expect, for example, to order a new white good appliance or something, and it be assembled in your dining room. For sure, yeah. And you wouldn't expect your car to be assembled in your driveway. And these are things we know that it would horrify us if that did happen. Why? Because we know that the processes of controlling those in the factory environment are much better. But in terms of construction, I think that the process of it's not about taking something which would have been done on site and just doing it the same way in a factory process. It is about looking at the processes, but also then it enables you with the data to actually drill into it, see what is actually happening in real life, and also be able to then run mock exercises and test out the risk, or where are the gaps in the system. But it'd be interesting your thoughts on these kind of sort of using technology, if you like, to manage risk.
Yeah, so some really interesting ones there. Like, I'm a big fan of this whole, you were talking about the Passport, with some, like, and obviously you're doing that like for each individual sort of asset, in your case, each balcony or each other sort of, component that you're doing. I'm a really big fan of these types of getting down to the data in individual assets. So obviously BIM is amazing for doing that. We have BIM models, which is then your hook for hanging all of this information. And I think, as part of this golden thread, this is again moving into that more detailed approach of not just, managing PDFs and then managing, quality forms, but, having those then linked to individual assets so that you can come along and start to see, okay, here is whatever, in your case, here is a balcony, here is information that's came through from the factory setting, all the documentation, all the, as you said, all that amazing stuff you were doing in the factory, all those records, and then how that all then gets assembled with on site, and keeping that together, but having it as, instead of just a, okay, I need to go and find that information in a big dump of info, but being able to actually search and go, okay, this is X balcony by scanning a barcode, for instance. And then, even after the building is being built, as part of that golden thread, having all of that information. So it's like, okay, I now have that, detailed information, all of that quality. I can be assured that right from the design stage all the way through the factory, delivery, on-site, installation, and then obviously into the maintenance world. Like that, I think that's absolutely, like the right way and how we need to be going, but we're not in too many cases.
Sorry, going.
No, and I was just going to say, like some of the other like really interesting stuff there that you were talking about, like the AI and stuff. Yeah, obviously that's I think AI is obviously like really big thing, a really in our, not just in our industry, in every industry, at the moment it is like the most hyped thing. I think again it's about in your case it's delivering a really good tangible item, and I think we're now moving on. It's about when do you implement the right technology. About earlier, about do you go too early? Is it right? When do you go? And I think it's about making sure these tools. I know, like you spoke about then as well, with all the welding, that you take like lots of photographs, and this is an area where I see a really big thing around the golden thread is around sort of 360 photographs, 360 video technology, because it's a real simple technology in the sense my software developers would probably kill me now for saying it's really simple. I'm sure it's a nightmare to get working, but for the guys on the ground, it's a really simple technology. They stick a little camera on their hard head. You just take a walk around the building site, records in 360. They can do that every day just as part of their walk. They don't need to go and do this as a specialist thing. And then you have 100% record of what is going on. It's like having, the way I see it, and this just comes into part of the culture change, and things like the 360 photography now, having that record change of what was going on. It's like having somebody looking over your shoulder. So it's like if you're there on site, people instinctively do better quality, and then linking that into having that as part of a wider quality system, where for instance Dalux are, that's part of our, on-site quality field management system. It's all embedded, and it enables then you have the photographic record along with the, as you said, sort of the digital passport, all your digital forms, your inspection and test planning, all keeping that, build up of information, giving you that assurity. And the big challenge is like doing that and keeping it usable and simple for the teams. But yeah, I see there's a lot there, and I think this then helps with all of that risk, because again, doing quality stuff reduces, quality way of working reduces that risk all the way down. There was another part of your question there, but I forgot. I think I talked too much. So
my thought process was really on, there are obviously trades which will never be put into a factory environment. Certainly we're big advocates of using the right MMC approaches. Balconies are an easy one to detach from the building, if you like. Yes, you've got the interface detailing and so on, but that can be really well coordinated and streamlined if you do it at an early stage. But in terms of that approach on, we've obviously got Regulation 38. It's been around for a long time. It's not a new requirement to hold information and have what is actually as built, but the reality was it probably wasn't as implemented, or as much more of a tick box exercise across the whole industry. But I'd be interested to know on your kind of thoughts and approach on that, kind of what hasn't changed, what has changed.
Cool. So I'm going to get to that maybe in a second. I'm just going to revert to that whole MMC approach in there. As I said, you've always been a big fan of MMC. I feel it's got bad press sometimes for it's been spectacular failures, but I'm a big fan of using stuff because it links up to this whole Reg 38. So if you can do like a lot of your M&E equipment in modulars and then bring it together and connect it. So I'd worked on Battersea Power Station, which had like the most incredibly complicated and large M&E systems in it. Like it was absolutely fast, insane. And they were really breaking it down into modulars, bringing as much as possible in. We've in the housing sector, then a lot of this can happen by having preset out sections inside for all the residential, for all of the kit that's going to be in there, whether it's going to be boilers or all the controls and stuff. And having these pre-manufactured brought aside is definitely the way. They come in, you've already collected all it, and not only is it a better way of it can potentially help with project programs. And I think that they can help with project programs if, again, engaging with the supply chain early, making design decisions early, so then you can get the factory output happening.
Yeah.
But then, as well as all of that, a lot of that information you're trying to collect for your Reg 38 file and for your O&Ms and the handover in general can all be happening a long time before, even some of it being collected before the equipment even arrives on site. Now, I know there is other information in there that can only happen on site, and once the build is happening. But it's about, as I said, this isn't something that was new, but historically, I have to say, O&M's handovers, Reg 38s, have been appalling. In the vast majority of instances, we've been I think they've been very much too often being driven by construction. We're handing over what was sometimes required for construction, not what was required for operations and maintenance, and not what was required now. What's required for safe operation. And there is a requirement now that both the contractor, principal contractor, and the principal designer, and also the building owner, who have to sign off and say, actually, not only have I received all the information, that all the information is as built, but that the owner or the person who's going to be looking after the building, the residential building, understands how it all happens. So we're in another big challenge, which I don't think we're really reaching, is at Gateway 3. I think that we're going to, as projects saw about Gateway 2, we're going to hit Gateway 3 in this handover, and you're going to see a lot of people going, I'm not happy to accept that information. It's not in a way that's usable for me. Like, is it going to, for instance, are they collecting information that is a Kobe spreadsheet and a bunch of PDFs and maybe a Vim model, and then go to somebody, there you go, and then them going, well, that doesn't work with our FM systems. Yeah. It doesn't, we don't actually understand that information. How do I actually, for instance, what am I actually meant to do to maintain a bit, for instance, a balcony, what are safety checks I might need to do every year on it, all that information should be provided during the handover and with the client and in an easy to use format. So I know, in Dalux we've been developing tools around the whole handover, and we have an FM suite as well. Now, we understand that all of our construction projects, all of our clients won't also be using our FM systems, but it does give abilities to where that is happening, a really smooth handover. But it's not just about the technology, as I said, it's about people understanding what information needs to be handed over, and a lot of that is getting involvement of the owner operators earlier, their FM teams. What is it that they need to do, getting all that planned preventative maintenance schedules, getting all of those. There's nothing to stop you setting up, all of your inspections that need to be done for instance, all your fire door inspections, and having that all ready and a system in place from day one. It just historically hasn't happened that way. So I think that's going to be another big change in our industry. That Gateway 3 is going to be a big surprise to people. After coming back to some of the quality companies, the quality contractors there, I think a lot of them now are starting to, and some of them have actually been doing it for quite a long time. Like companies like Waits and others have been doing all their O&Ms in-house. I've always, my whole career, hated the outsourcing collection of O&Ms. It's why do we do that? And it goes back to, well, we've always done it, and it was a package of work, and because it was a package of work, it was just easy to do and forget about. I just don't think that approach works. You don't get the right level of quality. The amount of documents I've seen in there are just awful. No control on the process. So yeah, I think that whole process really, I'm really happy that's going to change, because I really think it was an area that needed to happen. Yeah.
So again, it's back to that kind of early stage collaboration, understanding what the aspirations are for that process and the challenges which need to be overcome. Because there needs to be a way of working that out collaboratively, doesn't there, to streamline that process?
There is, but obviously this is technology really plays a big part in here, because if you have good CDEs, document management systems, information management systems, in place, you have those systems there, and your information is coming through and is going through all the approval processes, getting commented, getting signed off. You're asking for the right information, you're checking at the right time, it's getting approved, getting signed off. Then it's verifying that it's like an as built, because that's another requirement. All your information needs to be as built. But during that process, then the good systems, you can then just have automated, like populate then your O&M systems. Like it used to drive me mad that some of the information, even some of the things like certification, safety certification would come after PC on a project, and just because people are like, oh well, it wasn't ready, and it's like, well then the building probably obviously wasn't ready if you didn't have this critical safety certificate, and you've got an O&M company phoning and chasing. Well, the reality is good processes and easy to use, CDs and stuff should actually just eliminate all of that and just make it, a much easier process for contractors.
So one last quick question, if you like. ISO 19650 is talked about. What's your thoughts on it? Was it good in its time? Is it the future direction of where things are going? Or does it lie somewhere in between? What's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I think UK has been amazing at leading on the whole thing. So we had all the PAS 1192 back in the day, and the BIM mandate. I think it was great, and it really, really helped the industry. I probably wouldn't be here working apart from all this stuff. And then ISO 19650 came in and brought that to another level. Yeah. And I love it and I hate it. I have a real love-hate relationship with it, I have to say. And it's partly that in itself, the framework and what it's asking for is all brilliant. Yet it's sometimes when it comes to the implementation where, again, I think it's a siloed approach of you had people who were some little part of ISO 19650, some company on a really large project mightn't be 100% adhering to the exact detail of it, and that's all that gets focused on. And I'm asking people to deliver information that was never of any use actually on the project, rather than actually going as a framework to manage information. It's an amazing thing. How do we then ensure that gets taken, implemented in a sensible way on projects that are actually delivering the outcomes that a project wanted? So if it was delivering a really good Reg 38 and O&Ms and a really usable whatever BIM model or asset Kobe, anything like that, if it was all doing all that and you were getting really good outcomes, absolutely, then amazing. I feel that there was all often an industry in itself for people in their little silos. But I do think this is changing now. Obviously, NEMA now, who, used to be the BIM task force and stuff like that. So NEMA now is obviously they have now a new information management mandate, and that new approach that they're moving is good. I think all things, they have their time, and I think we're moving into this new era of it. And I think one of the really amazing things around the sort of golden thread stuff is a lot more sort of site-based people, a lot more exec people, a lot more people are now actually taking an interest in this, and it's not seen BIM and ISO 9650 as that was a thing I had to deliver to be compliant with in yours. Now it's actually, this whole golden thread stuff is really impacting my business fundamentally from everything I do. I better take a good interest in it, and I better get it right. I actually think, from that point of view, it's been, this has been really, really good, because it's got the whole industry involved, and not just BIM specialists.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, Johnny, had a really insightful discussion on many points. I'd be interested to know what your key takeaway is, and for the audience's benefit, what you think the key thing is.
Yeah. So, I think I'd say to people look, this might seem like a really daunting task. It might seem like it's causing a lot of problems out there. One, I'd say, look, two things. There is help. There is lots of people out there like myself and others who want to help the industry, move forward and are happy to, give our advice, like doing these things, try to spread the word. The other one is like, look, it's not all problem, it's not all risk. It really is opportunity. Like, so back in 2021, I'd written a paper on, this was, before the golden thread and everything happened, like an academic paper that was all about that there's a massive opportunity here with building safety, a multi-billion-pound opportunity. I still believe that, 4 years later, there's real opportunity here. If you take all of this digital golden thread, building safety, things that we're doing, for the organizations that really want, this is your opportunity to improve a lot of problems that have existed in your business. They can also be a differentiator. So you can then, go to, you do this in the right way, you will, instead of being like 18 months delayed through the process, you may be 3 months delayed through the process. Massive commercial advantage there. But I think just look for these opportunities. This shouldn't be seen as just another expense. This is a way to actually, improve business, improve profit, because like our industry surely needs improved profit margins at the moment. So
Yeah, and I fully agree. And my thought process and my key takeaway really from this discussion is that really it's about the outcomes. It's the outcomes which matter, and having that focus on the outcomes is really what makes a difference between it being meaningful and being a fad, if you like.
yeah,
In that process. But Johnny, thank you very much for your time. For our listeners, thank you for joining us and watching us in this insightful conversation around the golden thread and the role of technology in improving safety of buildings. This is the end of this podcast, but we look forward to you joining us in the next one. Thank you and goodbye.